Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Kevin Blekicki Show in junction with the Ryan Show. This is episode number 44. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy lives to tune into this program. Happy New Year, everyone. I apologize in advance if you hear any noise going on in the background. It is New Year's Eve. I am recording this after the Ohio State Miami Cotton Bowl. So it's almost midnight. You're going to be hearing fireworks going on in the background. I apologize for that, but I wanted to watch the game and then react to it and incorporate it into this episode. So I apologize for that. But we are going to talk about that game. We are also going to preview the three other college football playoff games that we have on New Year's Day. We're also going to talk about Week 18 in the NFL. There's still some winner-take-all games going on, and there's still some playoff seeding up for grabs, and there's a lot to get into, so we'll talk about that as well. Plus, there is some drama going on with the Mets because there always is, although haven't had any notifications of any big signings in a few weeks. I swear, Major League Baseball offseason can be some of the most fun off seasons in all of sports, but it also drags out so much because it's been weeks since the last big free agent splash that we had of Pete Alonso going to the Orioles. So MLB has to do something. There needs to be some sort of deadline. We got to get these signings in because there's just too much dead time where nothing happens. But we're going to start off talking about this Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic college football playoff quarterfinal between Miami and Ohio State. Miami being the 10 seed, Ohio State being the number 2 seed. Miami got the upset. And Miami was a team who a lot of people thought didn't even deserve to be in the playoff at all. I didn't think that they deserved to be in, merely just based on the fact that they didn't even play in their conference championship game. And as a Notre Dame fan, I've heard a lot of criticism about the team. I've heard a lot of people say, hey, just join a conference. That completely goes out the window when Miami is in a conference. They don't go to their conference championship game, and the team that wins the conference championship doesn't make it, and the runner-up doesn't make it as well. And yet a higher seed who didn't even make a higher rank who didn't even make the conference championship gets in ahead of them. I didn't think that was right. I thought that if you were going to let a group of 5 team in over the ACC champion, you just got to let the ACC go. You can't have them in at all. And they were let in, but they have proven that they belong. They went into College Station, Texas A&M, Kyle Field, the 12th man, over 100,000 people there. The biggest game in Texas A&M's school history. And they go into that crazy raucous environment in the SEC, and they get the win. It was the worst game in the history of the college football playoff, but they got the win, and you can't take anything away from them. And now they follow it up with a win against Ohio State. And Ohio State was a lot of teams' favorites to win the national championship. They were my pick to repeat, and their season has just completely fallen apart. They go from beating Texas in a highly anticipated Week 1 matchup. They played a close game there. They coast the rest of the season. Then they go into the Big Ten championship game against Indiana. Another tight, low-scoring game. Indiana ends up prevailing. They end up getting the number 1 seed. Ohio State doesn't fall that much. They only fall 1 spot to the 2 seed. They still get a first-round bye. And they as a result of it have almost a month off before playing in this game, and Miami had just played uh, against Texas A&M like a little bit over a week ago, and that's why this college football playoff is such a terrible format, and it's going to raise a lot of questions. And I assume that in the offseason that they're going to make changes because they have to, because this format does not benefit the teams that put in the effort in the regular season. Indiana is the number one team in the country. They won their conference championship. What do they get rewarded with? They have almost a month off. They have to go play a game uh, on the other side of the country in Pasadena in the Rose Bowl against Alabama, who has already played a playoff game on the road. And you're not giving these teams advantages. Ohio State didn't win their conference championship, but um, Texas Tech did, and Georgia did. And as a result of that, they get way too much time off, and they don't get a home playoff game in front of their own fans, which they deserve. You're reward. You get home playoff games for teams who haven't won their conference, and the teams that win their conference have to go on the road. They lose that home field advantage, and they have to play a neutral site game. It's so dumb. It's so dumb, and I still disagree with them letting in two Group of Five teams into the college football playoff. Look, the CFP is an absolute nightmare and a disaster. And the way that they pick these teams, and the way that they have the format, and having all this time off in between games, it's not good. And as a result, you're seeing that it not be a benefit, because there hasn't been a single team in the 12-team college football playoff era that has won a single game after having the first round bye. The teams that have the first round bye so far at the time of this episode are 0-5. Clearly, when you have all of this time off and you have a team that has already played, they've stayed fresh, they've been in a real playoff environment, and you put them up against a team who's had time off, has had to simulate games, and hasn't, played a meaningful game in almost a month, it's a huge advantage for the teams that didn't win their conference and had to play in the first round. And that's one of the main reasons why Notre Dame isn't in a conference, is because the current college football playoff bracket and criteria does not does not make for them does not benefit them to be in a conference. Because if you win your conference, in this situation, Ohio State didn't. They were still so highly ranked that they ended up being in the top four and getting a bye without winning their conference. But you have it where the conference champions don't have an advantage. And until they do, there's no reason for Notre Dame to join a conference, especially when they also get all of the money that they make from being in the college football playoff, and they don't have to split it with their conference. So there is no reason for Notre Dame to join a conference. I know I shouldn't be bringing up a team that's not even in the college football playoff, but I just wanted to kind of add to this talking point. Like, there is no reason why they should be putting these teams that put in this work through the 12 game regular season and a conference championship game, and punish them like this. It is a terrible system, and it is easily the worst playoff format that we have. But let's actually talk about this game, because you got to give credit to Miami. They won this game in the trenches. They absolutely dominated Ohio State on both the offensive and defensive lines. Whenever Miami needed a big play, whether it be just a simple handoff or Carson Beck, extending the play and trying to pick up a first down with his legs, they were able to do it. And you do have to give credit to Mario Cristobal. Through all of his faults in previous seasons as Miami's head coach, he is, pressing the right buttons, and you got to give Carson Beck a lot of credit for the way that he played in this game. Only had 138 passing yards, 1 touchdown, no picks. He had 7 carries for 23 yards, but every one of those 23 yards were necessary. Every time that he needed to step up and try and make a play with his legs, he was able to do that. And the main reason that the Miami was able to control this game was not just because of their defense, especially holding Ohio State to 3 of 10 on third down conversions, but they had 153 rushing yards to Ohio State's 45. So they were able to control the clock, time of possession, 33 minutes and 20 seconds for Miami, 26 minutes and 40 seconds for Ohio State. And Julian Sayin did not particularly have a great game in this one. You're going to look at his numbers and say 22 of 35, not terrible. 287 yards is really good. But he did have 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, QBR of 70.4. That's pretty good. That's on a scale of 100. But the reason why he had so many passing yards was because for a good portion of this game, especially in the second half, Ohio State was trailing the entire game, and they needed him to make plays, and he, was just always playing from behind. So you got to give a huge shout out to this defense. Jeremiah Smith got his bag. He was in his bag, 7 catches for 157 yards and a touchdown. They were able to hold Carnell Tate to 3 catches and 37 yards. Speaking of Jeremiah Smith, I think that he is the guy that the Jets should draft with their first pick in next year's draft. I know that they need a quarterback. They're not going to get Fernando Mendoza. He's going to go number 1 overall to the Raiders because they desperately need a quarterback. And the Jets do too. But I'm telling you, you line up Jeremiah Smith against Garrett Wilson. This is going to be a hot take. I think Garrett Wilson is the best receiver in the NFL because he's been able to put up these 1,000-yard receiving seasons. He didn't have one this year, but he's put up some numbers with some of the worst quarterback play in the NFL. You're talking about an absolutely washed Aaron Rodgers when he was with the Jets, Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle. He's, put up some terrible numbers, and he only has 312 receiving yards this season. He hasn't caught a pass since October 12th, and he is still the Jets' leading receiver. That's how bad they are. Their leading receiver has 312 yards, and they have no interceptions on defense this season. They are so bad. I made a video talking about their last game against the Patriots and how bad it was and how I think Aaron Glenn should be fired. I will, I'm sure, touch on the Jets a little bit in the second segment of this show. But man, the Jets are a disaster, and I hope they end up drafting Jeremiah Smith. So that does it for the first part of the Kevin Blekicki show. We will be back after these messages. Hello and welcome back to the Kevin Blekicki show. We are going to continue the discussion around the college football playoff. We're going to be breaking down the 3 matchups that we have. We have number 5 Oregon against number 4 Texas Tech in the Orange Bowl. Then in the granddaddy of them all, the Rose Bowl, we have number 9 Alabama versus number 1 Indiana. That is still crazy to say, number 1 Indiana in football. That's insane. And then the nightcap in the All-State Sugar Bowl, number 6 Ole Miss and number 3 Georgia. So right now, the big game, the one that everyone is circling, is number 9 Alabama against number 1 Indiana in the Rose Bowl. And the reason why this is getting so much attention, one, it is the Rose Bowl. It is on New Year's Day. It is a tradition. So it will be no matter what game is on, the Rose Bowl will always get the most attention. But you also have Alabama, a household name, a blue blood, a team that has been there before, but is currently playing the role of the underdog, as they were another team that snuck into the college football playoff, didn't win their conference. In fact, they got smoked by Georgia in the conference championship game. Of course, they had that terrible loss to Florida State early in the season, Labor Day weekend, and they came in as a 3-loss team, and they went into Oklahoma in Norman on that Friday night, and they won, and they came back, had a huge comeback win, and they won. And then you have Indiana. Indiana is not your prototypical number 1 seed. As I just mentioned, it is weird seeing the number 1 next to the name Indiana because they are not known as a college football powerhouse. They're not really even known as a college basketball powerhouse. It's been a while since they've been on top of the college basketball world, but they're a new blood. They've had a great turnaround these last 2 seasons under Kurt Signetti. So this is also, Kalen DeBoer, the Kalen DeBoer era of Alabama football after Nick Saban. Alabama is used to winning national championships. So I think that even as Kalen DeBoer is in a position that he hasn't really been, he's been to the college football playoff, but he hasn't been, the leader of such a big program. I don't think that he will have any time adjusting to the moment. I do have questions about Indiana. They did beat Ohio State. You got to give credit where credit is due. They beat the most recent national champion. But as I mentioned, they are in uncharted territory. Indiana is not a college football powerhouse. And this is going to be the biggest game in the history of that school. Are they going to be able to live up to that moment? As of course I mentioned, teams that are in the 12 team college football playoff era, teams that have a first round bye are now 0-5 after the Ohio State loss to Miami. So it's not looking good for Indiana. That's why I think that I would go with Alabama in this situation, because they've been there before as a program. Kalen DeBoer hasn't really been in, like I said, this position, being in control of this level of a team. He did have great success at Washington, but this is his, they say the SEC is a different monster and stuff. So this is a huge game for Kalen DeBoer, and I just trust Alabama more because they've been here in the moment before. And Indiana, like I mentioned, coming off a huge layoff. If this game was played in Bloomington, I would give the edge to Indiana because their fans are incredible. They are loud and energetic and passionate, and they would be ready for Alabama. But this game being played on the other side of the country in Pasadena takes away all of the advantages from Indiana. And I mentioned that Alabama has already played a college football playoff game. They went into a raucous environment in Oklahoma, and they were able to overcome an early deficit and get the win on the road. So I think they're battle tested, and I think that they'll be ready for this as well. The same thing goes for Oregon and Texas Tech. This is another team who Texas Tech has not been good historically in football. Obviously, their biggest, their most well-known player recently is Patrick Mahomes that went there. In Oregon, they're trying to get over the hump. Last year, they were the team in the position that Texas Tech is in now. They had the first round bye. Ohio State didn't. They had to play the opening weekend. They beat Tennessee at home, and then they went in. They played Oregon at the Rose Bowl, and they absolutely slaughtered them. And now Oregon gets the chance. They had the home playoff game against James Madison, and now they have a chance to continue their playoff journey after already having a college football playoff win so far against a group of 5 team that they were clearly better than, and they blew them out. Um, but then you have Texas Tech, a team who, again, this will be their biggest game in their history, and it is a game that is being played in Miami. So, obviously Oregon, literally other side of the country, could not have picked a team other than Washington that's farther away from this team from Miami. So, it could be somewhat of an effect on them, but I think that Oregon's going to get the win against them too. And then Ole Miss and Georgia. This is going to be uh, quite the battle. Of course, Georgia is coming off the bye. Mississippi, Ole Miss is coming off the win against Tulane. So again, they have the advantage of already playing a playoff game already. These two teams met on October 18th. Georgia got the 8-point win, 43-35. As we know, Lane Kiffin not coaching this team because he left to go to LSU. It didn't seem to affect them at all in that Tulane game. They seemed to be ready and prepared and focused. And I don't think that Ole Miss is going to have, that issue against Georgia. However, I do think that Georgia is a better team, and I do think that they will be the first team to win a college football playoff game after having a bye week. They already beat them once this season. It's when Kirby Smart gets a chance to see you twice in the same season, it doesn't usually end well for you. So I will be taking Georgia, and the reason why I'm picking them is because that creates a very interesting scenario, as if Georgia is able to beat Ole Miss on New Year's Day, then that will put them against Miami, whose quarterback is Carson Beck, who transferred away from Georgia. So you have Miami on this great underdog story of a run going up against Georgia for a chance to go to a national championship. So you have a former player, a player going against his former team with a chance to play in not just the national championship, but a national championship in his home stadium. It will be played in Miami this year at the Hurricanes' home stadium, Hard Rock Stadium, which they share with the Miami Dolphins. So it will be they will have a chance to be the first team to ever win a national championship in their home stadium, which would be awesome. But I also do hate Miami, especially I mentioned this last week, that they I mentioned this last week that Michael Irvin was doing his antics on the sideline and how cringe and just absolutely insane I still find them so weird. Michael Irvin has not played for the University of Miami in like 20 years, over 20 years, and he's just there for whatever reason. I mean, like, I get that that's his alma mater. I'm sure he contributes financially to that team, but it's just weird. It's just weird constantly being next, just it's weird showing up and root and being on the sideline for a team that you don't play for anymore. I'm sorry, I just find that weird. I had a little bit of a brain fart there, but we move on. So those are my picks for this week in the college football playoff. We are also headed towards the NFL playoffs, but before that, we have to play week 18. And we do have a winner. We have not a winner take all game on Saturday, but we have a game between the Panthers and Bucks. If the Panthers win that game, they win the NFC South. If the Buccaneers win and then the Saints beat the Falcons, then the Saints will be the I apologize. The Bucks will be champions of the NFC South. But if the Falcons win, then regardless of what happens in that game against the Panthers and Bucks, the Panthers will win. And you know what? Living in South Carolina, I know a bunch of Panthers fans, so I will definitely be pulling for the Panthers. They are my NFC team, so I want them to win the Super Bowl. But first, they have to make the playoffs. So that will be a big game on Saturday. The biggest game, obviously, of the week is the Ravens and the Steelers for the AFC North Championship. And this is going to be really interesting because this is a matchup of two teams that have head coaches that haven't won in a while. Both John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin have won Super Bowls as head coaches, but both of these teams are kind of, going to the end of the line, so to speak. These two guys are great head coaches. There's the running joke of Mike Tomlin only being good enough to have, winning seasons. He's never had a losing season there. It is crazy to get fired uh, after not having a losing season. But the Steelers are a historic franchise. They are a franchise that wants to win Super Bowls, as does the Baltimore Ravens. They haven't won a Super Bowl since the Joe Flacco era. So it is a matchup that if either team loses, they're going to be out of the playoffs. The winner gets into the playoffs. So it could also mean the end of the line for one of these head coaches who any other team would love to have as their head coach. But, for their team and for their time, they might want to move on because they haven't reached their expectations and their heights that they want to get to. But I think it would be, not wise to fire these head coaches. The grass is never usually greener on the other side, but these teams demand excellence. So good on them. And we're going to finish this episode last minute talking about the New York Mets. There was a report going out there that Katia Lindor, the wife of Francisco Lindor, has joined Zoran Mamdani's cabinet, who is the mayor of New York City now. He will be inaugurated on January 1st. And look, it seems like there were politics that got involved in the Mets locker rooms. That we know that Brandon Nimmo is a big Trump supporter. I don't know what Jeff McNeil's politics are. Probably Pete Alonso seems kind of conservative. So, it's possible that they looked at Francisco Lindor and like, he is the leader of this team. And, if he has these strong beliefs that they would get rid of him, I think it's kind of stupid. I mean, I don't think that David Stern is like, who did you vote for? And then just get rid of everybody who voted for Trump or whatever. I think that's stupid, but maybe politics played into it. All I know is my favorite player on the Mets is Francisco Lindor, and him and his family are beautiful, and they have great politics, and they don't support fascism. So that's awesome. But that does it for the end of this episode. Thank you for watching the Kevin Blekicki Show. Thank you for listening to this program. If you want to follow me on social media, follow me at Kevin Blekicki on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Happy New Year, everybody. I will see you next week.